The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
What if the greatest threat to your life is not out there? It's not war, it's not politics, it's not economic collapse. What if the real danger is sitting on your shoulder right now, whispering in your ear? That is what is so amazing about this book. It is a mind-blowing dive into our inner selves and the evil that lurks there that we don't even realize, and that is in every single one of us. That's why I love this book. I literally read through it and then went right back to the beginning again and read through it again. One of the most important books I've ever read in my life for understanding myself and the things that mess with my life and hold me back, and this untapped source of energy that, if left there, will create evil in my life, but if tapped properly, gives me an abundance of energy and life passion. Okay, let's get into it. Facing the Dragon, Confronting Personal and Spiritual Grandiosity by Robert Moore, the guy who wrote King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which is also a really good book for men in order to have an understanding of literally how to act in life, how to have principles, how to have really good guidelines for living your entire life. And so this book is the greatest book I have ever read on evil. And so why this book matters. The big thing that Moore talks about is that there is evil in us and in our society, and we don't even see it. We are blind to it these days for very specific reasons. We outsource it to fake villains in Netflix movies, and we also see it in the people that we despise. We put it onto political leaders that we hate, onto countries that we hate, and onto them, the others. And yet, if we don't see it in ourselves, it will ruin our lives. And this book is not a comfortable read, but it's extremely exciting. If you can hold up a mirror to yourself, it's literally the greatest thrill ride you could ever have, because you realize you're the angel and you're the demon at the same time. And it takes you through a ride into your psyche to really see into your life where you are that dragon or that demon or that evil, and also where, you know, you're the good guy, you're the angel. So if you're ready for an amazing roller coaster ride into your psyche, then this is the thing. This is the book. So there's really 5 areas that he covers, all, you know, very distinct and very important for understanding this, the holistic side of your psyche of evil. And I'm going to go through those relatively quickly to give you an idea of what he's talking about. And these are all like really, really important, especially in these times. So first thing is the dragon, and it's called Facing the Dragon. And so essentially what he's saying is that he calls the dragon grandiosity. Now, you could also call the dragon narcissism, which is what the psychologist Kohut called it when he birthed the idea of narcissism. Carl Jung called it the archetypal self. Freud called it the id. Adler called it the superiority complex. So psychologists throughout the last 100 or so years all have names for this dragon, this grandiosity. And so really what it comes down to is it's the ego inflation, that feeling that you are superior, that feeling that you are better, or even worse sometimes, the feeling that you are separate from others and therefore different and distinct and outside of the normal or outside of connecting with people. It's this real separation and inflation and aggrandizement. And so he says that it's sheer fantasy to even think that we could ever completely, separate ourselves from this feeling of grandiosity, from it as a source of what's going to try and separate us throughout our lives. And so the best thing to do is to be aware of it and understand your unique version of it so that it doesn't ruin your life. And so an example of this is, and in my world, it's like, let's say it's a startup founder who's very humble in the beginning and wants to build something, but gradually they start to think that what they're building is going to change humanity in some great way. This is the dragon emerging. Another example would be like a spiritual guru who says that they no longer have an ego, and yet they demand obedience from their followers. The dragon loves this sort of disguise so that it can sneak in and take over. The second part of what he's saying that's really interesting is that he says we are actually more vulnerable and susceptible to this evil now more than in the past. Moore argues that modern culture no longer has containers for this grandiose energy in individuals anymore because we have lost community. We have lost mentors, elders, people and organizations that would help us contain our grandiosity. And the more isolated we are, the more that this grandiosity, this ego inflation can ruin our lives in all sorts of ways. And he says that this grandiose dragon, this ego inflation, leaks out in very obvious ways in like extremist groups, spiritual cults, bosses who are insanely driven, and even influencers drunk on their own number of followers. And he puts it bluntly, the modern world's failure to give us knowledgeable elders has led to an epidemic of problems for which secular culture has no answer at all. And so that's where that line sort of hit me. Basically what he's saying is it's not just bad apples. It's a system that doesn't even see the bad apples. Point number 3, the denial of evil. And here's where Moore gets brutal and practical. He says you can't deny this evil. We try to suppress it. We try to push it down. We try to pretend it's not there, but it leaks out. It gets everywhere unless we are aware of it. And the more we're aware of it, the less that it affects us. We can do things so that it doesn't take over our lives without our awareness of it. And so an example of this would be like a priest or like a preacher who doesn't think that they have evil in them. They suppress it. Any sort of doubts, they push them down and they ignore them or deny them. And then we see that it leaks out in this horrendous behavior and so many abuses. And then the difference would be, let's say, a therapist who actually, investigates their own issues, does something called shadow work. They get to see their own potential for evil and then admit it. And so they're more likely to, one, like have empathy for those others that are going through that, and also have empathy for themselves. They're less likely to let that evil seep out into abusive behaviors. And that's where we come into point number 4, the trap of spiritual narcissism. And Moore says, don't think you're safe because you wear the spiritual costume, the robes, the beads, the necklaces, the symbols. The dragon loves hiding under spirituality. And it's pretty obvious if you look at the religions throughout the world and the past history of abuses that these organized religions have conducted on the world. They're horrific. And he says it's easy to mask this dragon of spiritual grandiosity in the costume of humility and peace and wisdom. And so you can look at these religious figures who, while talking about their spirituality and peace and love and harmony, are at the same time othering people and calling people infidels, asking for them to be killed because they don't believe in their religion. All of this is just pure evil hiding in the form of spirituality. And so Moore says it's not about having the wrong ideology or the wrong religion. It's about this grandiosity infecting any ideology and any religion and turning it evil. Point number 5, which is the antidote. What do we do about this evil that's inside us, that's either sitting there waiting to take action or is actively ruining our lives? And that's where he says, and I love this, that this dragon isn't just like this evil thing that can ruin your life. It's actually real, raw power and energy that, if harnessed, can propel you in life, can be a source of passion and energy for you. And we have this idea about, slaying the dragon. And he really says that it isn't about slaying the dragon. And this is the one that really struck me. It's about accepting that you have a dragon within you, befriending the dragon, and then controlling it. Almost like it's a pet, or it's your monster on a leash that you use for, if it's controlled, you use it to protect you, to propel you. And yet, if you let it go, it can destroy your life and everyone around you. That's the metaphor that I love in this book. And so how do we do that? How do we accept this dragon? How do we become aware of this dragon so we know what it is and how it wrecks our life? And he suggests that really it starts with good communities. It starts with therapy. It starts with having a good, in my case, like men's group, or a group of people who are honest and accountable, and practices that keep us grounded, and journaling about these issues and reading about them. I spend a tremendous amount of time reading about shadow work and then how to incorporate it into my life. And so that there is that, deeper awareness, and then the deeper acceptance, and then the practical ways to deal with it. And Moore says quite distinctly, the moment that you're isolated, that you are more vulnerable to this grandiose dragon that will ruin your life. And so why do I think this is one of the most important books ever written on evil? It's because Moore doesn't waste his time on garbage. He gets right to the point and really gives you the information you need to start to see where it is affecting your life, how to gain self-awareness around it, how to accept it, and the proper practical ways to control and harness your dragon so that you get a better life from it. And that's what I ultimately love about this book, and why I think everyone should read it, with a slight warning that it is intense. He has a tremendous amount of references, so I always had to look up authors or books that he mentioned, or people that he mentioned, to see, what he's specifically talking about. But at the end of the day, like I said, I jumped in, I read it, and I read it again. There's so much information here that you could read it over years and just keep getting more and more. It's a book that I will go back to all the time, and it's in my top 5 books of all time. So I would suggest getting it, reading it, and you will get a deeper insight into your life, and probably a better life because you've read it. So that's it for today. If you like this, subscribe, like, please share it with your friends. Help me grow the channel so more people can be aware, they can get a better life, and we can make a better world. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.